Oh, okay. So were you one of those people that was calling and harassing folks, or
Yes, and I was calling people. I was so arrogant, young black man
did
calling
you?
doctors
Were
that
you
was
acting like
past
it
due on
was?
their credit card bills. I loved it.
Were you
And
acting like it was your money?
I was acting like it was my money. It was my money. And
Tam Knows Real Estate, she do. Yeah. Whoa, Tam Knows Real Estate.
Hey guys, thanks again for joining Tam Knows Real Estate. And this is the place where investors, buyers, sellers can come just get information about where the market is, current market trends, what's going on in the news and politics with relation to real estate, and just to help you to be more educated, more informed buyers, sellers, investors. And so that's why we're here. And that's why I had to invite Victor Johnson from the Nico Don Project back. He was here before talking about, I don't even remember what we talked about.
we're talking about real estate investing, how to get involved with real estate investing. Yep.
Yes. And so one of the other aspects of your company is credit consulting.
Yes.
And so you've been doing that for many years. How many years have you been in that business?
I've been in the credit industry since 1997. I've been in the actual credit coaching business since 2018, where I was for my own company. But I come from the collection agency industry. So I've been in collections since the 1900s.
Oh, okay. So were you one of those people that was calling and harassing folks, or did you start at the bottom like that? Did you start?
That was me. I was one. I started at the bottom, yes, and I was calling people. I was so arrogant, young black man calling doctors that was past due on their credit card bills. I loved it.
And you acting like it was your money.
I was acting like it was my money. It was my money. And I moved up through the ranks over the years and continued to progress. And I ended up teaching people how to legally collect debts. And in my career, I'm proud to say this, and because I tracked it based on my bonus checks over the years, I have either collected or trained team members to collect over $100 million in debt in my career. Wow. I mean, that's a lot of debt, mostly credit cards. Yep.
Wow. Okay. Well, I tell you.
Yeah. There's a lot of debt out there.
That was a good feel for you, because I don't know if I would have cared. As soon as they said, well, I don't have it. Okay, well, have a great day. That would have been me. So,
they incentivize you to get that money. You already know.
Yes. And so but the reason I invited you today is because I did want to talk about a little bit of politics, kind of, sort of, and, and how that affects buyers. That could be investors or, just the buyer who wants to move into a home and, buy the home and move into it. So one of the plans in Joe Biden's, I guess, plan for America was to adjust the credit system. And I don't know that he was saying to definitely just get rid of Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, but more so to add this third party. And I think, and this is an opinion, but I think in the end, he might be looking at to be just one as opposed to work alongside. But the information that I was reading, it was saying that it was to work alongside the other three bureaus, so that to increase racial equity and to close the
wealth gap,
wealth gap, to create opportunities for people who may not normally be able to qualify for a home to have that opportunity. One of the things that stood out to me was that they would look at your rent payments, your car payments, and your utilities, which I feel like if you are a person who may have credit issues and you may have maybe some collections or even a judgment or something like that, but it's a good chance you pay your rent, you keep your lights on, and you pay your car note, because those are things that you need in day to day to live, survive. So, and so initially hearing about this plan, I was like, that's kind of cool. I think it would be a good idea. It might be helpful to people who maybe have like old things or not, things that are just dragging them down, student loans and things like that are dragging down their credit score or DTI and things like that. So if you could see where I pay my rent, because I need a place to live, I need a car to get to work. If I have to have lights for my kids, so if you see me doing this and you say, hey, that's a person who would pay their mortgage, I felt like, that was a good thing to do. But and I don't even want to say but, because I still feel like that's a good part of it. Yeah. However, I do hear other folks' opinions about it, and then I try to compare it to the facts and just try to see if it really does make sense, and will it really decrease the wealth gap? Will it be beneficial to buyers and sellers? What do you think?
So all great points. I mean, I've started reading into this a little bit more. There's not a whole lot of detail that I've come across yet. So I'm sure this is a developing plan. But the initial thought is that, again, just like you stated, to create a credit reporting agency, just like TransUnion, Experian, Equifax, that takes credit data from your lenders, the people you borrow money from, or the credit card company issuers, and take this data and put it into a number that calculates whether you're a risk or not to borrow more money, right? That's the whole concept of the credit reporting agency. So what Biden's plan is proposing is that the government steps in and we will manage this stuff because we feel like it will be better regulated. We can ensure the accuracy of the data being reported and all that. Well, I want to remind people that in 2008, as part of the whole Dodd-Frank Act and the creation of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, that was the point. That's what the government decided to do. They were stepping in because there were hundreds of thousands of complaints of inaccuracy, and there still are. But what they did at that time to mitigate that was to create this CFPB so that you could submit complaints to them, and they would force the creditors to respond back with either validation of the debt, proof that you owe the debt, and things like that. I think the CFPB was making some great strides to protect consumers. And then we had a change in the administration. They didn't like the CFPB, so they lost some of their power for 4 years. They're coming back, and here's Biden. So my 2 cents. So the details that I have seen is that they're wanting to, like we talked about just before you started recording, they want to be able to show transparency to the algorithm, which is the calculating formula for the data that comes in and how they take that data and turn it into a mathematical number known as your credit score. So first of all, FICO is the number one. 90% of lenders out there are going to look at the FICO credit scoring data, right? And so FICO is your Fair Isaacs credit organization. And what they're doing is taking that data and they're saying, based on the way this consumer behaved in the past, we predict that they're going to pay you like this, or we think they are a low risk for you to loan them more money based on their history in the past. That's really what the whole concept is about. So I don't know that this new entity would be doing anything new that the CFPB wasn't already stepping in to implement. There are a couple of other things. Again, the stuff that I'm reading online, there's not a lot of detail, but if you're talking about specifically trying to close a wealth gap, then I suppose what he's saying is that this will allow more Black and brown people to be approved for mortgages. Yeah. And if that's the case, then I guess it does help, but I don't know that this other entity is going to be able to just all of a sudden, unless they change the criteria for mortgage lenders and say, hey, now you got to let people with 600s, everybody got to be able to buy a house if they got a credit score. That's not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So, anyway.
And part of it too was, racial equity. So that's where the algorithm comes into play. And like we said, there haven't been any plans laid out with how that algorithm would work, because the plan, I guess once he decides or once they decide to move forward with this, then that plan could be laid out. They wanted more transparency. I guess maybe feeling like, preferential treatment was shown toward, white people or, the so-called majority in this country. And so, so that's where that part comes in, where it could kind of help out, with you said, with Black and brown people being able to get into homes. But also, what if you are that Black and brown person or white person who, like I said, if you got other bills that really aren't like day-to-day bills, but if you paying these bills that sustain you and keep you going, keep a roof over your head and lights, then I feel like maybe the credit company can say, or the mortgage company can say, well, they're going to do what they have to do to pay this mortgage because they want a place to live. So
right.
That could be, that's how I'm looking at it. You might say something to change my mind, but that's how I'm looking at it right now.
So listen, I agree with that. And by the way, FICO created, they got all these different versions, right? So FICO 8 allows you to count your utilities to be added. So if you decide to get that Experian Boost, which is allowing your cell phone bill, your utility bills to be added. Okay. Yeah, Experian is the only one right now doing that. So where they could make a difference is forcing TransUnion and Equifax to also allow that same criteria to be calculated into the scoring. So that would be a huge plus. But they're already allowing some mortgage lenders will use the FICO 8 to determine whether or not they're the person pays their utilities and cell phones better, and that helps boost the score up. That's why they call it Experian Boost. It's usually only going to change the 7 to 8, maybe 12, 15 points on the high end. Now, if you add more and more of those, then you can probably score differently. So I think that would be a positive if they could take this formula they already have allowed Experian, or they've created, and nobody stopped them from doing it. We'll expand that out to the other credit reporting entities. So I do like that. The problem that I see that could happen is that a person who pays their cell phone bill all the time and their utilities on time, it doesn't equate to that they necessarily are going to pay their rent or mortgage on time. As a landlord, so I have rental properties across the country, and we look at the credit, but we tell people, we don't really care what your credit score is, but I do care of how you handled your last rental history. Like, I need to know how you pay your rent. To your point, Tam, is that if a person is going to scrape, paw, and scratch to come up with their rent, they will probably do that in a mortgage situation. But what about the person who's not doing that to get their rent paid, especially during this moratorium where you are protected? You can't just move me up out of my apartment or my house because the moratorium in place. But I've been paying my cell phone bill on time and my power bill. So where do I fall? Should I now be eligible for a $400,000 mortgage? I don't know. I mean, I'm not a regulated lender that makes that decision, but you got to be careful. But where you want to allow more people in, but you still got to have those safeguards, because if these people get in these loans and default more, it's going to mess it up for future buyers where they won't be able to get approved, or they're going to have a 780 score before they can buy a house with $200,000. So we got to be careful what we ask for. We still need some controls in place to make sure that the market doesn't just completely go ham and we all end up losing money, especially those of us that own real estate. So that's important too.
Yeah, that makes sense. You don't want it to, I guess, when you say you give an inch and take a mile, for it just to go way too far to where it's ruining the system. Right. I also wanted to ask you, what do you think? Do you think, and this is just an opinion, I guess, do you think like the companies, because if this is created, will Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, or will the lenders are they going to be forced to go along with this new wave, or can they stick with the old way? Or, I'm just, unclear about that. Like, can they be forced, or is it just normal because they're private companies? Can they say, nope, we're not going to look at that one. We're going to look at this one.
That's a good point. That's a great point. So right now, what's in place is a mortgage lender decides which credit scoring system they prefer to use, where they feel like they get the most dependable information. And so right now, I just told you about FICO 8. So FICO 8 does allow you to calculate the Experian Boost, and an authorized user will help the score up. Whereas some mortgage lenders were still using the older versions of the FICO 5 and FICO 2, which don't allow those items to impact your credit score. So they're not currently being forced. Everybody's got to go with the most updated FICO version that's out there. Because now there's like a FICO 11 out there and all these things. So right now you're still allowed to use, as I'm saying, as a lender, you use the one that your company has decided to go with. Obviously, with almost anything else in this world, if they could force you to wear a face mask or anything else, if the government decides that it's in the betterment of the people, then I guess and they get enough votes. I guess that's how that works. You know, I'm not a politician. I'm not a CPA or attorney, by the way. I'm a certified credit consultant, and I just help people raise their credit score. So I'm probably much better qualified to know about these things than some people would, but I just want to make sure I stated that.
Throw that out there.
Yeah, I don't want nobody to say, oh, this dude is, yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. He told me to,
Yeah. Get your own advice on how to handle your situation.
Right.
It's a great point to talk about because we need to have more Black homeowners out there. There's no doubt about that. I share with a lot of people about how in the 1960s, FHA, you know, Federal Housing Authority, was allowed to do redlining and allowed to prevent Black people from buying homes from certain builders. So like the FHA will give a builder, you know, $3 million to build in a subdivision. And they say, look, we're going to give you this money, but you just can't have any Black homeowners in there. That was real stuff, people. Go look it up in the 60s. So that's why we talk about the wealth gap. We missed out on one of the greatest wealth building opportunities in American history, buying these houses at $9,000 and $10,000 in the 60s and allowing that equity to build up decade over decade over decade. And then what happens if you bought one of those houses at 30 years old in 1960 and at 50 years old, your 20-year-old wants to go to college? Well, now you can afford to pull out 50 to 100 grand of equity in this house that you bought for $10,000 in the 60s. That's worth $100,000 now. You can put your kids in better education. Or when they get out of college and they want to buy a house at 24, you can buy them a house and you help them with the down payment. And at 24, by the time you're 44, you've got 20 years of equity. Instead of in the Black community, that's where we're starting. We're buying the house at 44.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my clients are 50, first-time home buyers. They're 50 and, you know, and older, you know, because it has, and this is like a sidebar comment that could lead us down another rabbit hole that we're not going to go down. But, you know, Black Wall Street, when we were, you know, working to create and build in our own communities and have ownership and things like that, other people did not want that for us. And so they destroyed it. And so it's like we're constantly, you know, people are, you know, we're constantly having to, you know, start over. And start over, you know, so, and I think that has, you know, that plays a part in why I have 50-year-old first-time buyers and I have, you know, 60-year-olds who are calling me, you know, and sometimes it gets to be kind of, you know, it gets to be sad because, you know, it's like, well, my Social Security is $1,200 a month. What can I do? You know, and that's.
This is why
we're
making
trying to rent at that age and still trying to figure it out, you know, where I'm going to live. And, you know, these senior living communities are nice, you know, and expensive.
Expensive, more than a house, more than a house. Yeah. So back to your point in the credit piece, I like that there's discussions around how do we level the playing field. That is very encouraging, especially coming from the highest seat in our country. I think they need to do a little more homework and make sure that there's not already some things in place that maybe they can just put a layer of protection around to make it better and more equitable, as opposed to starting from scratch, creating some whole new system and tearing down something that's been in place 30, 40 years. Now, I'm going to say this. If you tear that system down, you might as well go to the rest of them because they all have some inequalities in them and inaccuracies. But I think this is a good start, and I think that it's important that that our administration is looking for ways to make it more fair for Black and brown people or any minority, financial minority, to be able to still acquire property in the United States.
I do agree with you with, you know, if you make some changes to what's already here instead of reinventing the wheel, make some changes, create more transparency, you know, maybe require that FICO 8 or the latest version to be what's accepted so that people can be competitive and get out there, you know, so folks who weren't competitive before, who had no chance, could now have a chance. And so I also wanted you to just kind of go over, I want to pick your brain about, because we think about Experian, TransUnion, and what's that other one? Equifax.
Equifax,
We only think about those, but what
Yes.
about Telecheck and LexisNexis? Like, what is their role? Can you explain what their role is in relation to, you know, this home buying process, or even, you know, what the mortgage companies look at?
No, I'm glad you mentioned that. And that's many people don't realize that there are several credit reporting or data gathering sources out there. Some of them gather information about your credit stuff. Others gather the different licenses that you have. Maybe you got a hunting license, driver's license, CDL. Others will track how many judgments and things that you have. And so I will say the mortgage lenders that I work with do not directly pull LexisNexis check systems. However, they do have ways to check to see if you have judgments, of course. Now, if you got judgments that have ended up on your credit report, that will be a negative indicator for you. They also have ways to identify if you have other properties or other loans, obviously, for other properties out there. But by and large, they're going to use the main three credit reporting entities. Where, again, it makes a difference is which FICO score they're pulling. And I love sharing this fact, and I think more and more people are starting to understand this. Credit Karma is probably not your most official source to find out whether you are ready for a mortgage. You can look at Credit Karma to just get a general idea where your credit scores are. But again, 90% of lenders out there, whether they're mortgage lender, auto lenders, or what have you, they're going to use the FICO algorithm because it's just more reliable. More creditors depend on it, and they feel like the data better predicts how the consumer is going to perform on their loan. So again, and I actually asked my brother-in-law, who's a mortgage lender out there, about this.
Jared.
And he said they don't check those, but we do run a fraud report to identify any properties that could be associated with the buyer. We also run a judgment and lien report. So whatever data source they're finding out there, I'm sure it's probably tied into the county, especially for the liens and the judgments. So it's pretty accurate on that. But I will
I noticed that judgments aren't on. People have said that their judgments, like evictions and things like that, were not on their credit report. However,
you're right. So a couple of years back, well, actually 2016, if I'm not mistaken, Experian got sued. Or Equifax. One of the two got sued majorly, and they had to pay out a huge fine to many consumers for reporting inaccurate information. And one of the things that they found out was that a lot of the inaccurate information was tied to the judgment data that they were reporting on credit reports. And many of these judgments, they come straight from the county clerk's office. And in the 90s and early 2000s, you know, before they got a lot of this internet sophistication, a lot of that stuff was handwritten. So my name is Victor Johnson. It might have been my dad that had a judgment. And they just put it on Victor Johnson's credit report. So because they didn't have a way to go back and accurately validate a lot of that stuff, they just decided we're going to stop reporting judgments on credit reports. And that helped a lot of people raise their credit score because, you know, now this item fell off of your credit report. But I'd be curious to see where.
Look at it though. So even though it's not on your credit report, the underwriters or the, you know, at the mortgage companies, they still have a way to access that information.
Yes, that's important to know because there are a lot of credit repair entities out there that will utilize removing stuff from those LexisNexis reports. They have a way to block it from reporting, but the debt is still there. And it's still shown somewhere. It may have raised your credit score, but unless you officially resolve the debt, it's there and somebody still will find it if they decide to use the original source to get the data.
So is that an automatic no? Like, say, for instance, if you have an eviction or judgment that was like 5 years old or something like that?
I don't think so. What I have heard is that mortgage lenders will take a collection item. Let's say your scores are still good. Maybe you're in the 670, 680, but you still have a collection or two on your credit report. What I've seen, and I don't know, they're making so many changes so fast that I don't know if this still applies this month. But I know in last year and a few years prior that they would take a look at, where was I going with the point? They would if you had a collection over $2,000,
2000.
they would take that dollar amount and say, okay, you have a $2,000 collection. We're going to take 5% of that, which in this example will be $100, and they're going to add that to your debt to income ratio. So if your debt to income ratio is, 42% with your static bills, your car note, rent, and all that other stuff, they will take the collection dollar amount and say, okay, now we got to multiply that if it's over 2,000 by 5% and add that as an additional expense to your debt to income ratio. And for some people, if you're right on the verge, that could knock you out of qualification. If not knocking you out, it might just change the rate, and now you're paying more for the mortgage that you just applied for.
Right. Okay. Well,
great questions, man. This is good.
Thank you. I mean, I appreciate it. I mean, you gave some good information. So the last thing, being that you are a credit consultant, I do want to pick your brain as to what are some basic things that we just need to do day to day, or, month to month, or however, to keep our credit score at a good rate, keep healthy and keep it raised, keep it going up. And, what do we need to do?
So number one thing, pay bills on time. I don't think I'm shattering the earth by sharing that information. If the maximum score you can get is an 850, 35% of your credit score is calculated based on paying on time. So if you take 850 times 35%, that's 297 points that you could lose from your credit score by being consistently late on your bill payment. So pay your bills on time. Secondly, I would say, as an aside to that, if you're looking to buy a house, you want to make sure you don't have any late payments on your credit report in the last 12 months, really the last 24 months, but 12 months for sure will be great. Okay. So no late payments. So I always encourage my clients, set up automatic payments, even if it's the minimum amount, that's better than being late. Okay. Right. Secondly, is the amount of credit that you use. So if you've been issued a $1,000 credit card and you use $500 at the mall or wherever, you've just utilized 50%. Pretty easy math. $500 out of $1,000, that's 50%. Well, anytime we go over 30%, you're starting to negatively impact your credit score, and your utilization can equate to up to 30% of your FICO score. So folks sitting in the 500s, many times it's because they've shown patterns of late payments and they're overextended in their available credit. So fastest thing you could do on a score, and y'all won't believe me, I really wish I could share the screen without showing this guy's name. I had a client that spent $7 at Starbucks on his credit card. He was already he was not over the limit. He was at like 85% utilization. Spent another $7 on his credit card. That took him up to 93% utilization. His credit score dropped 48 points from spending $7. Wow. $7. It dropped 48 points. And guess what? He can make a $7 payment on that credit card. He ain't gonna get 48 points back. That's not how that works. He's gonna have to get that score, that balance down to below 20%. Just to get closer back to where he was at. I'm telling you, folks, so that's where the algorithm, that's where the transparency in the algorithm, if people knew clearly, and I don't know how you get to this, but there's some technology buff out there that's going to create this for them, that if you could show on a scale, anytime you charge this credit card, this amount, you're going to move by this many points. That would make people feel like, hey, okay, we're in the danger zone. We are at our limit for the month. We got to eat ramen noodles for the rest of this month because our score is going to drop 48 points. Right. So those are two things you could do. Pay your bills on time and keep your balances lower than they need to be. Lower than 50% is good. Car notes and stuff, you can't help that, right? You're paying that as you go, but for credit cards, you want to keep those balances very low.
Right. And that's like an eye opener because it's easy to lose the points, but hard to gain them back.
It
Once
doesn't
you lose them, it's
come up
like,
as
man,
quickly as they lost.
goodness. Okay. It was something else I wanted to ask you. I forgot. Oh, you know what I wanted to bring up real quickly, and I'm gonna let you go for real this time. The student loans. Now, right now, they've waived, not waived, but given opportunity, to take away the interest, and not penalizing folks for not making their monthly payments. And I've always said now is a good time to make some payments if you can. If there's no interest, all your payments are going to go toward the principal. And then, so that, and not only would that help lower the principal, but also it'll just make you look in good standing. So now is a good time, because everybody who has a student loan payment now should be, in good standing until they lift this,
So you made such a great point, Tam. Like, listen, the CARES Act has officially been in place for 1 year and 7 days. So a year ago and 7 days ago, they said, we're going to stop interest charges on student loans. Even if you started just paying $50 a month, you would have more than $600 of the principal balance reduced on your student loan debt, right? Well, many people that I talk to, unfortunately, and it's not everybody, obviously, but he was like, cool, they not penalizing me, so I just stopped paying. I need that money towards this. Well, maybe you did need that, but when they turn the clock back on, now you still got the same amount of debt that you had with your student loan as you had a year ago. This is also credit utilization. So just like I used the example of the $1,000 credit card and you charge $500, that's 50% utilization. Well, if you got a student loan for $10,000 and now because of the way you paid it and the interest, your balance is $12,000, you are at 120% utilization. It's the same thing as your credit card. If you max out your credit card at 120 points, you're going to go, or 120%, you're going to probably drop by 100 points on your credit score. So take advantage, like Tam is saying. At this time, I don't care if you send in another $5. Just send in money. It's going to bring the principal balance down, and watch your credit score go up.
Yes. Okay, yay. Well, thank you again, Victor Johnson, for joining us. He's of the Nico Don Project. You can see his, if you can see, some folks will be listening, but the website, nicodonprojects.com. And let us know again your social media handles.
Yep. So for those that are listening and can't see the website on the screen, they can also go to victorvjohnson.com, victorvjohnson.com. And my name is Victor Vonico Johnson, or Nico Don Projects, on all the social media platforms. So Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, I'm out there. Victor Vonico Johnson.
Victor Vonico Johnson. Okay, thanks again, Victor Vonico Johnson. And I hope maybe we can talk again like around the summer, because what I'm hoping that you're going to have is a summer camp. So I'm thinking that you should do that. So I think
yes, we're gonna have Create Your Future Self Youth Program. We definitely will kick it back off this summer. So more information will be coming soon.
Okay, sounds good. All right, talk to you soon. Well, that concludes this episode of Tam Knows Real Estate. I appreciate you all for listening. And listen, buyers, sellers, investors, I got you. I have the information that you need to make informed decisions, create generational wealth. I mean, I got the goods for you. So just check in with me. I drop a new episode every other Wednesday. So that's every 2 weeks. And it's always going to be informative. And I'll chat with y'all next time.